Greetings guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Monette and this is my channel, Evolve with Monette. For those of you that are new here, I am a professional intuitive empath and I'm so happy to share some energy with you today. I have a download that we're going to get into and I don't really know what's going to happen during this download, but they were working with me earlier, they being my angels for those of you who are new here, and the song that I heard was Love on the Brain. And they were working, I was reading something, and what came up was the sound of codependency, trauma bonding, the sound of codependency, the sound of trauma bonding, the sound of addiction in relationships, what that feels like. When it's unhealthy. Codependency has a sound. After years of working with clients, that's something that I've discovered. When I have certain clients that might reach out or call in, I can hear what kind of energy they are working with if we're dealing with or talking about a relationship dynamic. Codependency, the sound of it, is like a vacuum. There's a whirring, like a woo, like the sound of energy being pulled in. That's codependency, because if you're in a codependent relationship, there is an element of energy vampirism that's happening if you're there. And so that's something that's really important to understand. You may not think that you're participating, but you are in fact participating. Now, I have been a codependent and am. I struggle, I work, I pray, I extricate myself, I'm mindful, I set boundaries. But at my lowest vibration in codependent relationships, I didn't even realize there was a sound. I didn't understand what was happening until years later as I began to work through some of those things. And I can't say even fully heal, but definitely work through. And as I really developed my practice, what I realized is that there is a sound when I'm working with a client who may need triage from me, spiritually or metaphysically speaking, in a different way than people that are balanced. People that are balanced don't have a sound, but I can hear codependency. So I was thinking, how do I convey this to you beyond the energy of vacuum? And what they gave me was a song by Rihanna, Love on the Brain. So we're going to go through some of the lyrics. We'll talk about that. If I'm led to, I'll pull a few cards and we'll have a little bit of a lesson about the sound of codependency, or what it feels like to be in a trauma bond. They say, you've got me like, oh, what do you want from me? What do you want from me? And I tried to buy your pretty heart, but the price was too high. Baby, you've got me like, You love when I fall apart, so you can put me back together and throw me against the wall. That to me was so powerful. Have you ever asked somebody in a bout of great lovemaking or a bout of great emotional conversation, someplace where you've reached a pinnacle, like, what are you doing to me? Like, what is this sorcery? What is this thing? Maybe you've tasted something particularly delicious and you're like, what is this? And there's a part of your brain that registers that the experience is so extraordinary that you're, one, maybe you could become addicted to the thing, or two, you're earmarking it so that, like, you can always get back here, and maybe you're associating a connection to the person who's making you have that feeling. So whether it's a chef that comes out and hands you something, or whether it's, like I said, great sex with somebody, do you know that hit, that narc hit of like, what have you done to me? So in the breaking down of any abusive, mentally and emotionally, specifically relationship, she says, throw me against the wall. Now, this song is sung by Rihanna. We all know Rihanna and Chris Brown's history with domestic violence and abuse and what happened to her, what she endured in that relationship, and what she endured growing up. Both of them talked about their origins, childhood woundings that led them to replicate it in a relationship. But there was a codependent predilection that was born in those childhood woundings. And so both Chris and Rihanna talked about it in her interview with Oprah, had associated abuse with being deeply loved. So when she says, even though I know that she had writers with this song, but when the lyrics say, so I love you love when I fall apart, so you can put me together and throw me back against the wall. Loving when you fall apart is associated with gaslighting. For those of you that have been involved in that narcissist empath dynamic. So, narcissists will devalue and do various things like that to get you off your kilter, off your rocker, not seeing clearly, not seeing well. And so what happens is then you start to question yourself, and there is a falling apart. And who's the person? If you're in a codependent relationship, which means that you derive an energetic hit, source, or need for validation from the other partner that disposes you towards returning to a toxic situation. Okay? So a narcissist will put you back together and then have you just to watch you fall apart or to break you again. It's very interesting. And I will show personal experience. There many years ago, somebody that I dated who was really toxic and just low vibrational. And this is a different person than the other person that I've talked about, so don't mind me, guys. Hashtag we learn our lessons slowly over here. Sometimes we evolve though. But this is someone I dated for a very short amount of time, and she was just a lot. It was a lot, but I remember an abusive cycle that we were in where she was just really vampiric and low vibrational and kind of gross. And I remember her coming into me after a moment of that, and I was just kind of like quietly not happy and like having a moment of like quiet tears to myself in the bathroom, and her like kissing me and being like, oh, you know, like come back to bed and whatever. That's this. You've got me knocked out, or you've got me like, what do you want from me? What are you doing to me? Because I was so in that loop, in that toxic loop with her, that I just was like, okay, well, I guess. And then I would kind of get back into it. You know, the thing about it is, fortunately for me, we broke up shortly thereafter. But the point here regarding codependency is that I realized is that this was something she enjoyed. In that moment, the reason that the breakup happened shortly thereafter is that I realized she enjoys doing this. She liked seeing me get to the point where I was frustrated and trying to figure things out, and she was being rejecting and cruel, and I didn't understand it, just so that she could kind of kiss it and make it better, and only to just repeat that cycle. So if you have been in a codependent relationship, maybe that cycle feels familiar to you. Then the next part says, you've got me like, don't you stop loving me. Don't quit loving me. Just start loving me. When I pulled away, or when anybody pulls away in that kind of toxic cycle, the abuser needs a hit. They need the energy of you to come back into their life and to stroke their ego, or to do whatever it was that you were doing that made them feel seen. And so when you threaten to take that away, then it's the baby please, then it is a cycle of abuse that begins again. I'm going to link another video below that I just watched of someone called, oh gosh, don't make me lie, what is his name? I cannot think of it right now. He had a t-shirt line that says, I do alpha male shit. I don't know what his name is. The Destroyer? Thunder? I don't know. But it was somebody in the UCF that was on one of those reality shows. And he ended up going to jail. He's in jail for like 30 years because he violently beat and raped his girlfriend who was in a cycle of abuse. And what I'm going to link below is the video of the story if you're interested in seeing the story. But her testimony was so powerful about the cycle of abuse, and it's just maybe a few minutes that she testified. And if you are in an abusive relationship, whether it's physical, emotional, spiritual, verbal, whether as spiritual meaning a cult or some kind of religious sect, that's unfortunately a part of my experience as well. So we'll definitely break that down in a different video. I want you to watch that video below, okay? Because I do think that there is incredible food there for anybody that may question what the abusive cycle feels like. And she talks about how he would beat her and how he beat her terribly one time. And then after the beatings and after that, he was the sweetest and kindest, most nurturing, loving, would go out and get all our favorite snacks, would go to Starbucks, would just become this incredible human that she thought she was with, who was violently abusing her. So And that's the part here where their abuser is essentially saying back, don't stop loving me, don't quit loving me, because they're caught up in their own cycles. Think back to Chris Brown and Rihanna growing up in abusive households. Both of them seeing that and then replicating it later. So how are you, that's a question to ask, replicating abusive cycles, and how are you kind of normalizing maybe abuse, whether it's psychological or otherwise, as something that you deserve or is a validation of the love that's being shown? So the next stanza is, baby, I'm fist fighting with fire just to get close to you. Can we burn something? Can we burn something, babe? Baby, I'm fist fighting with fire just to get close to you. Can we just burn something, babe? If you are loving someone who is toxic or narcissistic, you will feel as though you are fist fighting with fire. Wow. That is my Simply Human mirror that just turned on, even though I wasn't doing much moving. It is motion sensitive, and I think it's just a validation from my angels that, yeah, I was fist fighting with fire personally in my most recent extraction from an abusive dynamic and relationship, verbally, emotionally abusive, okay? Very emotionally abusive. Not ever physically. What I will say about the validation from my angels is that my person was a fire sign. So if you're on this channel, we're not just talking about psychological things, but metaphysical and spiritual as well. And so I was in fact fist fighting with fire. I was hurting myself all the time trying to love something or in someone who was just really imbalanced and was caught up in their own cycle of abuse. Okay, so can we just burn something, babe? That was her response back when I'm like, I'm fist fighting with fire. It was, can we just burn something? And then the next part is, and I run for miles just to get a taste, must be love on the brain. That's got me feeling this way. And now we loop back to Rihanna's programming. She's just described to us shenanigans, hoops and hurdles, abuse and pain, and then she ends it. It's studded. The end of that sentence is studded with her proclamation, must be love on the brain that's got me feeling this way. And here's where we get into the psychosis of abuse, the sound of codependency, that my angels are just going to talk. I guess the mirror is, I shouldn't have it there. I guess we're just going to light up and up and down. Here's the deal. Not to say that when you're in an abusive state, there is a bit of psychosis because you get pulled into a world. It reminds me of Whitney and Bobby, and then both of them talking about locking each other in closets and doing drugs for hours. That's the state you can get into. If you want to see the state of a crazy abusive cycle, even more so, Eminem's video with Rihanna talking about, oh gosh, it's just slipping my brain, but I'm thinking about it. Love the Way You Lie. That's what it is. And Eminem raps so brilliantly about the abusive cycle. I don't want to be here. I'm breaking down things. I'm breaking you down. I'm broken down, but I'm still here. I'm back. I can't. I'm addicted. That's the energy of codependency and trauma bonding. Addicted to the pain. That's the trauma bonding. Addicted to this terrible time in each other's lives, maybe when you were in poverty, when you met each other when you were younger. Addicted to being stuck, addicted to the struggle, whatever the struggle is. That's the one that's conjured up in your relationship, or the struggle that happens because when you are not spiritually aligned, you will be fist fighting with fire. So just some things to think about. But the next stanza, she says, must be love on the brain that's got me feeling this way. It beats me black and blue, but it fucks me so good and I can't get enough. That's the addictive cycle. There is a part of you when you're in an abusive relationship that will romanticize the payoff. Now, for her here, it's sex. I won't repeat it, but you heard what I said. So she says, it blanks me so good. There is this I don't know if it's a misnomer. It seems to be the truth. I've seen it. But a lot of relationships that have this toxic energy, usually there's this strong, heightened sexual energy in the relationship. Now, if you're dealing with a narcissist empath dynamic, we call this a love bombing energy. And narcissists don't really have sex with you. They have sex against you because they're in their own performance of how good this feels and what you're doing for them. They're not really ever engaged with you. Narcissists are not good in bed, contrary to their inflated egos and beliefs. They're really not, because they're not good lovers. Okay, so here's the deal with this. The sexual energy in some of these relationships that you may be seen, engaged in yourself, can be highly addictive, which puts you in that pain and pleasure state, okay, where you're making love and you're having sweet times and all of that stuff. But also, if you're not having sex, there may be an emotional payoff. What is the thing? What is the validation, empaths? Let's get serious here. That your narc has given you in the past. If you had a narc-empath dynamic that made you feel like, okay, well, this is enough to get through the next abusive stage. Because I certainly negotiated with myself about what I was getting and what I needed and what I felt like I deserved. I really did. I really struggled with that. And I knew I was getting an orgasmic payoff that wasn't necessarily for me sexual, but for some of you it may have been physically a sexual orgasmic payoff. So she is speaking metaphorically and actually here, because I feel like there is an element of that may not always be addressed in abusive relationships. It's a sexual addiction to each other. That's another thing. But emotional addiction to each other as well is also a thing. So it beats me black and blue, but it blanks me so good, and I can't get enough. And then she ends it with, and I can't get enough. Hold on. Must be love on the brain that's got me feeling this way. Must be love on the brain. And it keeps cursing my name. No matter what I do, I'm no good without you, and I can't get enough. Must be love on the brain. No matter what I do, I'm no good without you. How many of us have told that lie to ourselves about a codependent relationship? It's a lie. Can I call it out? It's a lie. Interdependence is what we're striving for. I have no kumbaya-ish to tell you here. It is hard work to get into an autonomous state with yourself, especially if you know codependency in your bones. If you came from that familially, like Chris and Rihanna did, like a lot of us do, it's hard to unlearn those patterns. No matter what I do, she says, I'm no good without you. That's also gaslighting from a narcissist at another angle. A narcissist will have you to believe that without them in your life, you just don't know what you're doing. I've had narcissists tell me that I was terrible in business. I've had narcissists tell me that I must be a criminal when they were the ones that ended up in jail. Terrible in business when I'm the one who is an entrepreneur. I've had narcissists tell me that I couldn't write, and I buried one poem I do remember. I want you to understand how they will get into your head under a bed for a couple of years until one day I found it, and that narc was out of my life, and I submitted it, and I won the contest I submitted it into. But they told me when they read it, it was shit. That's how a narcissist will get into your head, because they are terrified of their lack of achievement, and they need you to stay dependent, codependent on them. So they will try to brainwash you into believing that you are not great. The last narcissist in my life had issues with relationships and marriage, and so she spoke a lot of negativity over mine, including hating when I was trying to get into it, hating as I was in it, hating the whole way through, because it's not something that she could ever do or fathom. Not really, not sincerely, not without drama and chaos. Narcissists will try to make you believe that their insecurities and their failings are yours, and that's gaslighting. No matter what I do, I'm no good without you. They want you to believe that, but it's not true. It's not true. I had a narcissist tell me that my readings for her, and not just for her, just they were terrible. And there are things that I will share with you guys later on the channel, but that has been validated. That was a lie. As Maury would say, it has been statistically proven that that was in fact a lie. In fact, quite the opposite. Quite the opposite indeed. Accompanied by validation. Not from that narc, of course, but the thing is, if I were, thank you angels, if I were to believe everything that the narcs in my life told me that keep me codependent, I would never be sitting here talking to you today. And so if you stumbled on this video, don't believe their hype. You are good without them. You don't need to be in a codependent state with them, because you are capable of extracting yourself from that relationship. So let's go forward here. Essentially, Yeah, it's a repeat in the lyrics again of what we covered. So we covered the meat of the song, but that's the sound of not narcissism. That's the sound of codependency, because whether it's physical or figurative, it is how you process when you're in one of those relationships. And what I'm here to tell you is that you are okay without this person in your life. You do not need their validation. You don't need their energy. They do need yours. And that is really the sound of codependency. The bell dinging, bing, and going off as you realize everything they tried to convince you that you could never be and that you would never amount to was all the things that they were. When you take some time away from a codependent and narcissist dynamic, it won't just be the sound that you hear in your head of them and their lies and their manipulations. You'll start to hear yourself. You'll stop needing to be filled by outside validation, and you'll start understanding that the only one, excuse me guys, who can validate you is you. That means pull away from aunties, friends, all of that stuff, and start really loving yourself, because your opinion at the end of the day is all that really matters. I know that sounds so cliche and easy. If you're a 20-something-year-old watching this, that will not be what it feels like. It does take some time to get there, but you will eventually get there. We all as women, don't we? Come on. Women that are 40 and up, comment below. You understand. We all get there. We get to the point where we're like, oh, this was all some bullshit. Yeah, it was. And if you're in a codependent situation, you will realize that it takes work. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that there is some magic salve that makes you not feel the addictive energy that we talked about at the top of that song. The pull to be back. This feels so good. It hurts so good. That's there. But you have to leave that, because there is a better day and a brighter day and a bigger promise for you. You do not have to be stuck in the limitations of that, because codependency is you being okay. I heard one of my favorite readers, the Ghetto Nun. She's amazing and hilarious, but she was describing codependency and the divine masculine and feminine kind of journey with the karmic as the divine masculine essentially being used to being in a dog pound or one of those shops that sells puppies, and she was like, they're used to being petted as soon as they need to be petted. There's a million hands there to pet them. That's the power of choice and all that stuff. They're used to that codependency. Someone feeds them and takes care of them, but they never fend for themselves, and they never allow themselves to be adopted into what is a normal and healthy way of like, I'm part of a family, I have responsibilities here, I do this, I do that. I thought it was a really powerful lesson, and that they settle for the pats on the head because that's all they know. They don't know that there's a whole world outside of that plexiglass and outside of that storefront, and they are settling for quantity. Oh my God, what a word, instead of quality. If you're in a codependent relationship, there is a high level of contact and energy exchange that happens, but is it quality? That's what your angels want you to ask yourself. Or are you just used to having the negative reinforcement so often that that feels like what a relationship should be? Allow yourself to adopt out of the codependency and get into a centered place and become a family in and of yourself, because you don't have to stay in that place feeding somebody else's energy. But it doesn't mean that when you leave, I'm never going to lie to you, that you leave and don't think, did I do the right thing? You did. You did do the right thing. And when years go by and time goes by, you sit there. I'm resolute talking to you tonight. I don't feel any panic. I don't feel anything. But man, in the beginning, in the last couple of years as I was going through a disconnect, I struggled. So I want to share that. I know the sound of codependency, y'all, because I've made the sound. And when I left the last relationship I was in, I heard the sound. It wasn't even from my partner. It was from her side piece. It was a powerful lesson. When you get in tune with your star player, which is yourself, as Cat Williams says, your star player, you will understand that you have every resource you need to discern what's happening around you. If you have to ask yourself quietly when you slip off to sleep tonight, is this codependent? You already know the answer, empath. You already know the answer. Divine Feminine. It's time for you to sing a new song. It's time for you to make not a sound. Come back next time and join me, and we will continue to evolve together.